Welcome to another exciting episode of the Business of Digital podcast, featuring your hosts, Matt Siltala and Dave Rohr. All right, everybody. So what we're jumping into today, we're going to talk about those quick SEO changes that you need to make to get 2018 rocking for you. And so we're going to rely heavily on Dave. Hey, Dave.
Hola.
This episode. And so I'm excited actually to jump into this because, it's funny. How many over the last, probably starting at the end of November, all of December, and even now into January, all of the emails that I'm getting, hey, would you be a part of this quick roundup post for, your best SEO tip for 2018? And a lot of times, I'll pick and choose which one of them, that I do, depending on, do I know who's participated in them? Does it seem legit or whatever? And so it's interesting for me because I do like reading those type of posts, for as annoying as all the requests that might come in, because, typically if you can get a good if you get a good level of people participating in that, a lot of times you can get that one golden nugget from someone that they're putting out there, but it also gets you thinking about everything and all the SEO stuff that you've been doing. And so, again, I'm not going to be putting you on the spot and telling me to give you your number one SEO tip of 2018. I'm going to tell you to give me all of your tips for 2018.
Yeah.
But anyway.
And I purposely didn't go and read any of those recently so that I wouldn't
get any bias.
At some point about 2 months ago or so, when we had this idea for this topic, I wrote down 4 of them. So I'm going to stick with those.
Awesome. Perfect. No, that's great. That's great. And so, one of the things, and I'll just maybe start off with one of mine, and then I'll let you jump into those
Sure.
4. And the only reason is because the reason I'm going to jump into this one is because it's something that has really been on my mind a lot, because, again, for all the different posts and that I've been asked. And it's funny because I started off the same way with all of them. My advice for your best SEO things or whatever has not changed. I've given the same advice for the last 5 to 7 years. Be the solution. If you can create the kind of content that is answering the question, and again, this is, hopefully you have all the other stuff, and maybe you're going to get into some of this stuff. Hopefully you have the technical stuff sound. You have a website that's SEO friendly, and you've done all that correctly. But as far as like my best piece of SEO advice, I'm always letting people know it's never changed in the last 5 to 7 years. It always comes back to, being the solution, answering that question that people have, whether it be in the form of an infographic, a video, a PowerPoint, a sell sheet, long form content, a meme even. I don't care. Is it solving someone's problem? Is it are you being that solution? And so, again, however you want to answer it, that's up to you. Understand your audience. Are you going to put it, on Instagram? Are you going to put it on Twitter, Pinterest, whatever? Lots of different things there that can be optimized. But the point is, and hopefully what I'm trying to get across and make, and that you're understanding is, you're being that solution, and that's the kind of content. And that's, that's what we want, as SEOs. We want people to find us because we're providing that solution to whatever problem. So
I only have 3 tips now. No, I'm kidding.
All right, jump into it, Dave.
You do not steal any of mine. So I'm going to totally reverse the order I had these for. One of the things I used to do, and for those, if anyone's here that's an in-house, like SEO, in-house digital marketing manager, online marketing manager, whatever your title is, basically you do everything digital. One of the biggest problems I always had was time. Fighting against meetings, fighting against requests, fighting against just that uphill battle of trying to do 50 different things. And the one thing constantly I saw slip through the cracks until I knew I had to have a meeting with my boss, who was very analytical, was spending time in Google Analytics or Google Search Console. what I would do when I was in-house is I would set 2 meetings a week for 15, if not 30 minutes, knowing that I would probably cancel one of them because some fire came up that day. But what my goal was to ask a question about a service page, about traffic from a site, what people were doing once they got looked at a product page, whatever that was. I would just ask one question a week and then dig into Google Analytics, Google Search Console, Bing, and try to answer that. Okay. So that, what's that?
No, I'm following along. I like that.
So it was just like, and I've talked to some people in the past about it because it's been a couple of years since I did like an analytics training. And one of the questions I was like, how many people here own the business? And I think there was like 20, 40 people in the crowd, and like 4 of them raised their hand. And I'm like, so you guys do everything, right? Yes. Whoever looks at their analytics? None of them. Nobody.
Nobody.
Even if you're the owner of the company and you ask questions, how often do you ever go in there yourself and just go, so this is our top selling product. How is everyone getting to it? What's our worst selling product? How are people finding it? How long are people spending on the page? Start asking questions and trying to understand how people are using your website. Go into Google Search Console. And if you have Google Search Console connected to Google Analytics, you can get some of the query data and you can start digging around and saying, oh.
So I have a question for you then. How,
sure.
Because if and again, this is just for those people listening to help them figure this out. But so let's say you have this room of 30, 40 people or whatever, and nobody raises their hand. Well, what can you do, or what do you do? How do you help them become more familiar with getting into analytics, not being overwhelmed with it? Because I know a lot of times people will log into that and they just will, they'll get hazy eyed and wondered like, what just happened? And so what would be some of your best advice for them?
Ask a question. How do people get to my website? And then figure it out. So figure out which reports, which sub-reports, how the navigation, and if you talk to Annie Cushing, she'll say that it literally changes every other week. And to a small point, sometimes it does. I don't think it's been doing it as much lately, but poke around. And that's just another way. Yeah. If you're not even that familiar with Google Analytics, spending 15 to 30 minutes in there to understand what percentage of the traffic to my website is coming from paid, and then figure out what that answer is.
Well, it's interesting that you say even that little bit tidbit, because there was a gentleman that I was working with here, a friend of mine, and same deal, same thing with not getting into analytics. And, I logged in and I showed him, and he was blown away that like 70% of his people that were viewing him from mobile. Like he had no idea, like he had never gone in, and he's like, I can't believe that I have that information. He's like, that changes everything with like how I think of the kind of content that I want to create and my audience and different things. And I think like it kind of went ding, 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 so to speak. Yep. And so again, yeah, like that's just something that those little things right there, like something as simple as figuring out that, you have people like you and me telling you all the time, hey, you got to prepare for mobile, you got to prepare for this or that or whatever, but actually going in and seeing, hey, this is actual data from Google, then the light switch kind of goes on.
And my second tip kind of touches a little bit on that, and it's taking GSC and GA. These are literally 2 different tips, I swear. The first one is you really have to set time aside to do it, to ask questions about your paid. And maybe that setting that time aside is set 15 to 30 minutes a day and pick one thing. So on Monday, I'm going to look at my paid search for the last week. Just 15, 30 minutes, ask a question, go figure it out. On Tuesday, I'm going to look at my social media. We posted 4 times last week on Twitter, or maybe we posted 40 times. Maybe
one of the things that we could do, Dave, we could add in the blog post for everyone when we share this episode is, we could kind of give them an outline of some of the questions that they should be asking. I think that would probably be helpful for a lot of people.
Yep. and just kind of go through each channel. And, if you do a lot of flyers, or if you do TV, or if you do radio, or if you do something else, literally each day, just set aside a small amount of time to go, what did we do? And start analyzing what's working, what's not, asking questions and understand. You don't have to be an expert, but I think just that little bit of time, and it would help me find little things. And that's kind of how, like, whenever just poking in, and I work with some of my clients now that they poke their head into AdWords. And on our calls, they'll start asking me questions like, oh, I saw you added this negative keyword. Why, I totally didn't see that. Or I also was looking and you added this one, or we also have this other product and it's actually called this. How can we work this in? Because I noticed it's not in the keyword list. I'm like, oh, I had no idea people would call it that.
No, that's good.
I didn't know on the organic side. So just poking your head in there and asking whether it's your consultant like me, or if you're in-house people, just to kind of go, hey, I saw SEO is up, the last 2 months. What have you guys been doing? Oh, do you need more resources? How can we get this up for the next 2 months? Because we're on pace to hit, our quarterly sales, leads, whatever it is. And I think just having that little bit of insight and just 15 to 30 minutes, because everyone's busy, and just assume that sometimes it'll fall off. The other thing for the second point was start asking really detailed questions of what pages rank, what converts into sales. And if you're not familiar with Google Analytics or Google Search Console or even Bing Webmaster, this might get you a little bit tough. But you could also start looking at your meta tags and page titles in Google Search Console and seeing, what keywords are showing up and what ones are you ranking for? What page is ranking for it? Do you even mention it on the page? It's like, oh, well, we rank number 9 and we don't even talk about that on the page. Perhaps we should revisit that product content or that service page. I have one client right now that wants to rank for a certain keyword, and I was looking and I'm like, we don't even mention it. We're actually doing pretty well, but we don't even mention that variation or anything about that really on the page.
Oh, wow.
So we should probably take a look at this content again, since, I thought we were going for something else, but now we're going for this. So we need to revisit the content. And now they're revisiting all the content saying, oh, we relaunched the site. We did all this stuff about 4, 5, 6 months ago. So now we're going back through the content.
Yeah. And I think you bring up a really good point with that is, and just to kind of jump in here really quick and talk about that, is a lot of times people, they put the content out there and they think, all right, I'm never going to have to touch it or revisit it again, or I can't, or whatever. But absolutely letting them know that you can update that content, you could change it, you could add to it. It's kind of like what we've said with a lot of the, paying attention to other analytics and seeing what like on social media, for example, what does well. I pay attention to stuff through Pinterest analytics all the time. And when I see something that's doing really well, you know what? A lot of times I'll use that right into the website as well. And so again, paying attention to that kind of stuff and understanding that, hey, you can change it, I think is a good point.
I mean, if nothing else, if you take away that SEO and just digital marketing is not set it, forget it. Whether it's AdWords, social, SEO is not set it, forget it. I think we've talked about this before, but just ongoing little tweaks. To use a NASCAR analogy, they do test runs and set up a car as best that they can. But if you've ever watched a race, whether F1 or, anything, they're constantly making changes to those cars during the race. And your website and SEO and all of your digital marketing and all of your marketing in general should be that way as well.
Well, and you bring up another good point that, that's what I'm trying to tell people all the time, because, it's not like ever a one and done thing, because they're like, well,
I wish
we did the audit, we changed the keywords, we created the content, we did this and that, and so we should be good. Well, just as good as you are, there's like 50 more people that are trying to come and compete and take over what you've done. Or like when someone's, hey, good job, you got us in the top 3, so that means I don't have to keep paying you anymore. Well, actually, that means that you absolutely should keep paying us, because there's that many more people that are going to be trying to outrank you now. And so anyway, just helping them understand that side of it too is kind of what I was thinking of when you mentioned that.
The other thing And the number 3 tip is Google yourself. Go to Google, go to Bing, go and look up variations for your name. Your business name sucks. Business name review. Just your business name. If you have founders or co-founders or presidents that are well known in the media or that talk or that have local even may have some sort of presence online, include them in it and go and see what shows up. Do you have what's that?
No, it's a very good reminder, just for the reputation management side of it and making sure that nothing negative is coming up.
Well, often it's like Google Business will show up or Yelp. And it's like, when's the last time you clicked over and looked at your Yelp listings, ratings
Well, that very thing happened to us the other day, and good thing that I have trained our people to, Google ourselves, as you say, because we found out that for some reason we weren't showing up in the the maps listing or whatever you want to call it. Like one of our places listings was gone. And, after a little bit of investigation, we figured out what's up and got it back on. But, had we not been paying attention to that, it could have gone months without being noticed,
Yep. And I'll drop a link in there, but Moz has a local search thing that'll kind of look at all of your main citations. It looks at Facebook, LinkedIn, not Yext, Yelp, I think City Search and White Pages and some other places. And it looks to see, do you have the right phone number down? Do you have your website and a couple other things? Yext also has a power listing kind of scan that does something similar. The number of times I've looked where it's like, you have no photos, your phone number's like, and I'll take a screenshot and I'll send it to someone. I'll be like, which one of these 3 phone numbers that I found on 8 sites is the correct one? Or which is the correct address? Because I'll see 3, like literally I saw once with 10 sites, 3 different addresses because it was their home address that they started with. And then someone else.
I'm only laughing because I've been there.
Yeah. Someone else I just worked with recently, I was like, and I'm doing a dive right now. And I'm like, I found all of their original listings that got set up. I don't think they set them up, but they all got set up when they filed all their business paperwork, and all these different services grabbed this data and created profiles for them. Wow. So now they have 2 profiles out there for all these different things. And, if someone does a search for it, because that's how I found it, I was like, well, what's this address? That's not their address. That's not their phone number. I'm like, that's their business. But then also just look at the reviews. So look at those citations, look at those reviews. Are you answering? You should be answering those anyway, good and bad. But for me, those are another thing that you should be doing constantly. But, perhaps you had a really busy Q4, or maybe your Q4 is just wrapping up depending on where your business cycle is and when you get busy, especially if you're an accountant. If you're an accountant, you should be going through everything right now and trying to, make sure that all this stuff's in place before the onslaught for the next 3 months.
I'll back to your reviews comment, in monitoring and answering and stuff like that, I'll kind of give you a amen to that, because recently I've been looking through a lot of VRBOs or Airbnb stuff, and the ones that I pay attention to the most, and again, you could look at this on Yelp as well, restaurants and whatnot, but the ones that I pay attention more to and probably end up booking are those that have owners or, the managers or whoever is responsible for that going in.
Are active.
And actually, that are active, that are responding to the comments that people make, positive and negative, saying, and again, not attacking, but hey, we're sorry you had these issues. Thanks for making us aware of them. Like it helps me understand that these people are aware it's legit. I'm not going to get taken. I know that I can count on them to possibly help me with any kind of problems that happen. And so it's a good point. So sorry, we need to get you onto your 4th point.
Nope. 4th point. I've been telling, it's always been, anytime I've done an audit the last couple of years, I've mentioned one of these 2 or both of these. Your site should be moved to HTTPS, and I will raise my hand because I have a site or 2 that Before I got busy at the end of last year, I started to try to move over, but I have not. But you should start seriously considering and looking to move your site to be HTTPS, which means using secure site. And also
tell them what will happen if they don't and what. Yeah.
That we can have an entire talk. Like we could have, I was just looking, Aleta Solstice has a great kind of migration document for moving from, like, it's step by step, kind of how to move from non-secure
to with you guys.
Yeah. There's a ton of stuff in there, but also, and Matt just kind of talked about it, the one person he works with that didn't realize that 70% of their traffic was mobile. Your site really needs to be mobile friendly at this point. If not, you need to have a plan in place to move it there this year, because even some of my clients that are B2B, beyond the blog, I mean, some of the blogs, it's like 70, 80% mobile traffic, but even their websites now, it's getting closer to at least 50-50.
So do you ever have those people that say, hey, Dave, let's just make it all mobile. Let's just make it completely mobile. What do you tell them?
I think it depends on the site, honestly. Like if you're a publisher or, depending on the mobile and that frame, like how is it going to operate for someone on desktop? Unless you have no users on desktop, then, who cares? But I still worry about where the conversions come from. And that goes back to the first point. And the second one, if you look and you say, hey, where are my conversions coming from? We actually did a bit of an audit for one of my clients and I were digging into our leads and sales going into Q4 to see what pages we needed to look at, where after a site migration, where were we down compared to year over year? And I started looking at the number of leads and sales that came in from mobile. And it was actually 40%. It was 40% or 50% of the leads from certain pages. And 60 to 70% of the sales were actually mobile, but only 20 to 30% of the traffic on that page was mobile. So
that's crazy.
Conversion rate from traffic to lead and traffic to lead to sale was ridiculous for mobile. For desktop, we were having problems.
But you also just kind of hit the nail on the head to one of your first points is why you need to be paying attention to your analytics or figuring that very thing out. So that's awesome.
Yeah, because we were like, this page is crushing it. Why? Where are they coming from? And we just started asking question after question. And the deeper we dug, the more we kind of went, wow. We didn't,
that's nuts.
Like we look at the leads coming from this page, but we didn't realize that it was kind of broken out like that. So you really, when you start asking questions about, can we add this to the form, or if we do something to the form and changes it, we really have to be testing that page to make sure that before we launch it, do we QA it? What does it look like on mobile? Because that page crushes it.
That's awesome.
So those are my big tips. Things
all right.
You're doing anyway, but if you haven't been, like Matt said, now is the time. Use tip 1 to kind of set up that reminder. 2, make some time to try to start digging into all the things.
And you know what? I had mentioned this to Dave, and I don't really want to jump into it. I don't have a lot of time left. We want to wrap up here, but recently on the Avalanche Media blog, we did a blog post called The Ingredients of a Successful SEO Campaign. And so it might be something that's worth, we talk a lot about and give a lot of the links to the same stuff that we talked here with Google Search Console, analytics, goal tracking, things like that. And so we'll drop a link to it for everybody listening. I do appreciate those taking the time to listen to this podcast. For Dave Rohr with Northside Metrics, I'm Matt Silzel with Avalanche Media, and we will hit you on the next Business of Digital podcast. Thanks, guys.
Thanks all.